This is the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, an all-around fantastic phone and Samsung's best offering for 2022. I honestly believe this is the best phone money can buy, but there is also a case against it. Let's talk about that. Now, one of the biggest developments this year with the S22 Ultra is the integration of the S Pen stylus. In past years, Samsung had their Note series for their more professional users and the S series for their more everyday all-around users. But after pretty much openly canceling future Notes, Samsung decided to combine both and create one fluid device which has the S Pen and design of the Note series, as well as the software and cameras and other all-around aspects of the S21 Ultra. But there is a burning question: is this new design actually functional? Well, for starters, this is Samsung's most precise and fastest S Pen ever. The pen uses artificial intelligence to predict where the user will move next, bringing the response time from 9 milliseconds on previous devices down to 2.8 milliseconds, making it almost indistinguishable from a real pen, which in my experience makes a huge difference. And as for overall design, I definitely think it's really subjective. A lot of people I know haven't really liked the design, but I personally really like it. Like, for example, the camera bump on the back. It's not really a camera bump, that's kind of why I like it. It's more like 5 hole punches, and it's different from pretty much every other huge camera bump on most smartphones. Now, it does collect a lot of dust and it's pretty difficult to clean, but if we look past that and maybe put a case on it, it looks pretty unique. Like, compared to the S21 Ultra, it looks very different, and it's something that you may like or you may not like. The only real complaint I have with this phone is the sharp edges. Now, if you don't use a case, or even if you use some type of clear case, those edges really dig into your hand, and after using it for a while, it can cause the insides of your hands to hurt a little bit. But the design looks stunning on a table because it does look quite different from not only iPhones but other Android devices in the market. So we just talked about the design of those cameras. Now let's talk about the cameras themselves. In the past couple of years, even more so in 2022, smartphone companies have been upgrading their cameras less and less, and it's been more aesthetic and software related upgrades. And Samsung this year has done pretty much the same. Now, there are some software upgrades, but I think it's just more of a case that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Some companies are just lazy to fix their stuff, but Samsung's cameras have been mostly great. So let's talk about what they fixed and what they've done great in past years that has still continued into this phone. Starting with one of the more controversial features, which is the zoom. Now, a lot of people say the 30x and 100x digital zoom is not really useful and it's more of a gimmick. Now, I'd agree with that because I can notice the difference between a bad image and a good image. I can pixel peep. But a lot of people, I believe, can benefit from a 20x image, which looks fine to them because they're a normal user and they're taking a picture of maybe a bird or a plane. And in that case, Samsung's new image processing technology is really helpful. I've noticed zoomed images with the digital zoom are much, much clearer than last year, and sometimes 20x images can look at a glance indistinguishable from a 10x image or a 3x image. I know it's crazy to think about. Of course, if you zoom in, it's going to look completely different, but it does look stunningly good and much better than I thought it would be. Overall, the cameras on this phone are really great. The images are sharp, they're detailed. As you can see, the stabilization on the video is great. The only real complaint I would have with the images are the contrast. Like, it's known that Samsung phones have had bad contrast, like a little over contrasty images, but it is a problem. Like, I've noticed in some images it can be really contrasty, but a little Lightroom can fix that, and overall the images have been really great for me. And yeah, night mode is my only real complaint here. Night mode images can look great in some scenarios, but I think Samsung's just doing a lot of software boosting to increase the brightness and colors, and sometimes it just looks terrible in some conditions. But, in general, if you have some sort of road lighting or lamppost lighting, it'll look fine. But yeah, I mostly prefer the iPhone's night mode to Samsung's. There are also some other minor upgrades, like a copied center stage feature called auto framing. They just blatantly copied it from Apple. But also there is a improved UI inside the camera app, which I'll get into a little bit later. But one thing that really surprised me with the cameras was the stabilization. The video stabilization is fantastic. Like, even with cameras that have physical in-frame stabilization, it doesn't even look this good, and I'm wondering how they were able to do this besides, of course, OIS, optical image stabilization. it actually is stunningly good. I was running back and forth trying to get it to look like a phone recording, but it was looking fantastic. Now, of course, there is some like jitteriness on the ends of the frame, but overall, it's really good for a phone. And I just wanted to praise it real quick for how good it is. And also, portrait mode is one thing I just want to shout out. In past years, Samsung has been horrendous with portrait mode, and the Pixel has been winning every time. But this year, I think it's doing pretty good. Now, it's no Pixel, of course, but portrait video, portrait mode, front-facing portrait mode has been pretty good for me. Here's some sample images on the screen. Yeah, I think it's pretty usable now, finally, because Samsung has been so behind in this category in previous years. The display on this phone is huge, both in importance and physically, but it's not much different from the S21 Ultra. That's a good thing. It's a 6.8-inch Quad HD Plus AMOLED HDR10 Plus certified display, which is a bunch of complicated terms, but basically it means whatever you want to do, it's going to have great color reproduction, deep inky blacks if you want to watch a movie, if you want to play games, it's going to handle it perfectly fine, and it looks fantastic. Although, I don't know if you want to play games on this phone. I don't really play mobile games, but I tried testing it out just for the sake of this video, and it does hurt your hand a lot. Those sharp edges are kind of a big problem, but hey, if you want to do it, go ahead. Just don't tell me I didn't warn you. This screen, just like the S21 Ultra, has a refresh rate of 120Hz, which is impressive, but what's more impressive is that since it's LTPO2, it can now dial the 120Hz all the way down to 1Hz when your screen is idle, which should increase battery life and boost performance. There's also the peak brightness, which can go all the way up to 1750 nits, which is incredibly bright and in my experience, great to view outdoors. All that said, the curved edges on the screen aren't exactly my favorite. Like, I know it looks cool, I agree with that, but it's not ideal because it causes a lot of mishaps and stuff like that, and even with the case, it still is a disturbance. So, it's not a huge problem, but I definitely would do without the curved edges. This phone also comes with Samsung's One UI 4, which One UI has been ridiculously mocked in the past, and for a right reason, but this year I think Samsung has decided to change that. I think this is Samsung's first real competitor to stock Android. Samsung has also now promised 4 years of software updates, which brings you all the way up to 2026 or Android 16. So the battery for me has been kind of okay. I've been getting around 6 to 7 hours of screen on time per battery usage, but a lot of people have been getting a lot less than the S21 Ultra with even like 5 hours of screen on time, which is ridiculously low for a Samsung phone, but especially a flagship Android device. So I don't know what's up with that, but I've been doing okay with medium brightness and medium application usage. Now the charging is also pretty good. It comes with support for a 45-watt charger. Of course, it doesn't come in the box, but we expected that. And charging speeds are okay. I mean, it gets around to a full charge in 55 minutes, which is good, but it's no Oppo, OnePlus super warp charging. They're getting really high up in those numbers. So that brings us to the big question. Is it actually worth it? Well, after 2 months of usage and pretty much all sorts of testing, it's definitely one of the most premium phones I've ever used. But I probably wouldn't recommend it to most people because there are some things that kind of stray most people away. Like, for one, it is 4 gigs of RAM less than last year's base model, which had 12, and Samsung says there's some sort of software boost performance, just like with the battery, but I don't know. I mean, they could have just kept the same RAM, and then it would have been 16 gigs with no extra physical RAM, no extra costs. But the real reason I wouldn't recommend this phone for many people is because, if you probably noticed throughout this review, I've been mentioning things in this phone that are very similar to the S21 Ultra. And like I mentioned in the camera portion of this review, if it ain't broke, why should Samsung fix it? So they've pretty much gone ahead and done that. They've moved all of the great parts of the S21 Ultra into this phone and just added a couple software tweaks and stuff like that. So if you're not looking for the latest and greatest $1,200 smartphone and you're really fine with most of the basic features of the S22 Ultra, then you can just buy the S21 Ultra for a much lower cost at pretty much any retailer, including Samsung. So I'll leave you at that. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.